Hey guys, how's it going? So today we have 3 things to work on. The first is fruit tree pruning out here in the orchard. We don't have a tremendous amount of pruning to do this year, but I want to walk you guys through the steps of what I do with my fruit trees every year, whether or not we've got a lot to prune out or a little. After we're done with that, I've got some sweet spring flowers I'd like to plant around the boxwoods that are in containers around the front of our flower shed. And then the last thing I want to do is give you an update on how all the bulbs are doing that we planted in the cut flower garden last fall. So let's back up and start with just an overview of the orchard. So we've got our flower shed right smack in the middle of it. There are 4 fruit trees on this side, 4 on the other side, and 1 right behind. On this side, we've got a Honeycrisp apple. The 2 back trees are peaches, a Snow Beauty white peach, an Alberta peach. This right here is a Tilton apricot. Right in back here, we have a Flavor Top nectarine, which this one is clearly the youngest tree. We had to replace a pear that had fire blight. It was one that I had been limping along, and last year I finally decided it needed to go and we needed to get a tree in here that would actually produce something. So we went in with another Flavor Top nectarine because our other one is amazing. So this one is going into its 2nd growing season, so it's pretty small. The other one we have, I'm just going to skip past this one real quick because this is the other Flavor Top. This one is going into its 4th growing season. That tree produces loads of fruit. Then right here we have a Santa Rosa plum, which they are so delicious. We're going to have to make a bunch of heading cuts on this tree. Look at all that upward growth, so much. And then up front here we have a Perfection apricot. These are so good. And the buds are about ready to burst. Look at that. We're about ready to see some beautiful flowers out here. And then right here we have a Honeycrisp apple. And here are the supplies we're going to be using today. Paper towels. We've got some rubbing alcohol to clean our pruners between trees. And then our Felco 2s. I don't think we're going to be making any large cuts today. They're going to all be smaller, so this should be sufficient. I do think I'm going to need to grab a ladder eventually. But let's just take a look at this apple tree right here, the Fuji. This is looking so good, and this is a perfect example of the kind of shape I'm going for. And there's 3 methods of pruning a fruit tree, and I think I'm gonna go stand somewhere where maybe the wind isn't blowing. Yeah, I think it feels more still right here, just a tad. And the sun feels glorious. It's supposed to get into the high 50s today, but that breeze this morning has got a chill to it. Anyway, 3 basic methods. You've got your central leader method, your modified central leader method, and your vase prune method. And I want to say that in commercial situations, you'll most oftentimes see the vase prune method, and it's where the central leader of the tree, so like that one strong branch that goes like from base to tip, is cut out. So it keeps the center open and it keeps the tree a lot smaller. And those side branches that are shaped like a vase, they get really big and thick, and they're very productive. It's kind of maximum light and airflow, I think, through your tree can happen in the vase prune method. Your central leader method is where you leave that central leader. So you've got a really strong branch from base all the way to the tip, and then the tree kind of forms around that. It creates beautiful trees. That's the major pro. The con is that your tree gets a lot bigger, and all the trees that we have here, they're semi-dwarf trees, so they'll grow about 15 to 20 feet tall. If you just kind of let them do their thing, but that's really hard to harvest. So you have to have some really tall ladders to get up in those trees and take care of pruning and harvesting. So you have to keep that in mind. So what I'm trying to attain with my trees is the modified central leader approach, where you let the tree have several strong branches that go up, but we make heading cuts to kind of keep the tree's growth in check. And I'll walk through all of that when we get there. But this is just such a good example of a modified central leader. I think I used this one as my example last year when we came out here to do this project. But you can see the trunk at the bottom goes all the way up to where it kind of forks right here. And instead of just creating one single branch that went up, it's kind of 3. And then once it gets up to here, I didn't choose a specific branch. I let it fork again. I didn't choose one to keep and, kind of stake it up to where it kept growing straight. I'm letting them kind of do their forked thing. That way we can get up there, cut the vertical growth down a bit. That's the heading cut. So a heading cut is basically like this. That's probably not where I'm going to cut that one, but that was just an example. It's just when you take a long, strong branch and cut it back to a point where you kind of want to keep the growth size-wise. So anyway, you can see that shape in our apple tree. You can see it here in the peach tree. You can see where there's spots where it's forked several times. You can see it here, and see in this one, we have a very dominant central leader. See this one right here? So if you go to the tippy top, follow it all the way down, definitely has that central leader. I don't really want that. So take care of that. Create a modified central leader and let these sort of start branching out. So those are the 3 methods. The first thing I do when I attack one of these trees is the 3 Ds, and I know I talk about that a lot, but diseased, damaged, dead. It's an easy way to remember it. Anything that looks diseased, cut it out. If you think something is diseased, which usually you will see some like open wound or maybe some like sticky sap sort of a situation, you want all that out of your tree. So cut that out, clean your pruners between each cut, even if you're going to continue cutting on the same tree, because you don't want to spread a disease from one part of the tree to the other. And definitely clean your pruners between each tree, whether or not you think there's something diseased. When I'm done with this apple, I'll clean my pruners before I start cutting on my peach. And then the obvious, you know, anything that's broken, cracked, dead, take care of any of that. Boy, I came through and did so much pruning last year. I don't know that I'm going to find much in the way of the 3 Ds to show you, but I think that step is pretty self-explanatory. This is amazing me that there is nothing to show. Like not one tiny little broken branch at all. Oh, hey, look, here's a dead branch. See that? This one looks almost white in color. The wood looks a little bit shrunken and there's no swollen buds, while on the rest of the tree, there are swollen buds all over the place. So we're gonna come in and cut that out. There we go. There's our example. When you're done with that, step number 2 is to come in and cut out anything that's crisscrossing, competing for growing space, any branches that are cruising back to the center of the tree. So if we look at this one right here, you can see this little branch is cruising right back into the center, and I don't want to encourage growth on the inside. I want to have it come out. So with that branch, let's take a close-up look at where to actually make your cut. When you come in close here, you can see sort of this swollen area right at the base where the branch meets the bigger branch. That's called a collar. You want to make sure not to cut into the collar. You want to make your cut just before it. So let's see if I can do this. I gotta turn my pruners the other way so I get a nice cut. So collar here, we'll make our cut just before it, like that. On this peach tree, we have a great example of something that's crisscrossing. See how this branch comes up, it curves and then hits this branch right here and is resting on it. We don't want that. So again, we come in, we locate the collar, which is the swollen area right there, and we're gonna make our cut just above it. Like so. At this point, I also take out any really weak branches because they will try to form fruit. They did last year, and then I had a problem on my hands. I had way too much fruit for the size of this tree. So I need to be more mindful of that. Oh, this is a great example. Let me get close. That's a really good example of a collar right there. So see that swollen area right in there? We want to cut just before it. That. So steps 1 and 2 will really take care of a lot of the pruning issues. I mean, that's when you'll thin your tree out. That's when you'll take out any branches that might be competing or might eventually be competing. I mean, really take a look at the structure of your tree. That's why it's so handy to do dormant pruning rather than in-season pruning. I feel like there's a little bit less shock to the tree and you can just see what you're doing so much better. But you might be taking out some bigger branches if you feel like eventually they might compete, and it might be better for the overall shape of your tree to get them out early rather than wait until it becomes a problem. Then once we're done with step 1 and 2, we will move on to step 3, which is making your precision cuts, which is when I usually do my size control. I get up and do the heading cuts on the top, and I just step back again and I assess the shape of the tree. When you are making cuts on branches that you are intending on saving, like the bottom part of the branch, you want to be mindful of the way the bud direction is going. For example, this branch right here that's going up, I want to save this branch, but I don't want it to keep growing up this way. So to correct the shape, what I'll do is follow it down to an outward facing bud. You can see right there, that little swollen spot, that is a bud. If I cut it above that bud, my new branch will take off this direction, which is what I want it to do. If I cut it above a bud, like right here that's facing toward the inside of the plant, the new branch would take off that way and create a problem. So you can see how high this one is or how tall it is. We follow it down. I want this one to grow out about right here. So I'm going to make my cut above that swollen bud. Like so. But you can see on this apple tree, all of these spurs right here on last year's growth, that's where all the new apples will come out this next year. Its tree is going to be loaded again. Okay guys, I think we just need to set up and get this project done at this point. I think I'm gonna tackle this climbing rose while we're out here as well. It doesn't need a lot of training, but a little bit. I'm just gonna tuck it in the fence and do a little pruning. Okay, so here we go. Okay, this tree is all done. I think we're gonna get lots of good production. The whole thing looks cleared out. This one wasn't super thick to begin with, but there's a lot of room for light and airflow. The more your tree gets and the less foliar growth that it has to feed, the better and bigger fruit you will get. Here's our pile. So like I said, we didn't need to take out a tremendous amount. Always clean up any spent fruit. So check the ground around the tree. Make sure you clean up all the debris because this can harbor disease as well. Now a clean paper towel. We'll get our pruners cleaned. All right, let's move on to the peach tree. You know what? I think on this tree, I would like to take out some lower branches. So this is going to be more of a major prune. We're going to be doing 3, 4, 5 maybe branches around the base and bringing up the level of this so that it's easier to get the mower around and all of that. I did it to this tree last year and I am sure glad I did, because this one had some really low branches. You can see right here, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I left this one back here because it was cruising up and really creating a good shape for the tree. But I mean, it was low like this other one. I think we'd be better off taking those branches out now before there's fruit on them, because once there's fruit on them, then I will for sure put it off until next year and the branches will be even bigger. We need to go get some loppers. Okay, I've got the big loppers out. Same cutting rules apply, where you look for the collar and make your cut just before it. It's always a little painful. I think I could take that one down a little more. Whew. That looks so much better. There's those poor branches on the ground right here. So we took out 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now it looks like an actual tree with an actual trunk that's visible. Kind of wondering about this low one now. Now that we can kind of see the shape with the other branches gone, I feel like even if we took it out right here, this one will kind of take its place because it's growing that way. I think we should go ahead and do it. Better. And even from this angle, you can't tell it's gone. Oh, it feels good just to look at these trees, which makes me wonder about trees like this. Maybe we start this process a little younger so the branches don't get quite so mature and hard to cut. Yeah, nice. Now I want to do it to all the rest of our trees. These are kind of low, some of them. Some of them are kind of important to the shape though. If I cut all these low ones, we'd end up with a complete lollipop tree. I think I'll leave those alone for now. But look at this one. We can definitely get rid of these. Oh, better. Okay, I think I'm gonna leave the rest of them alone for right now. Except for the plum. I'll probably cut some of these, I'm guessing, but they're pretty thick. I need loppers for that. Okay, I'm gonna carry on with this peach tree and then we'll move through the rest of them. guys, we got it all done. All the fruit trees, the climbing rows, the 2 pots in front of the flower shed. So now let's just tour all of it, including the bulbs in the cut flower garden. So standing here in the front of the orchard, I don't know if you can see the little pops of purple and blue in here. Bulbs are just now starting to come up. We've got some winter aconite, and those are all throughout. You just have to look for them. And there's some little blue scillas right there. And there's a couple of little daffodils. Oh, they're the sweetest things. So not much action on the bulb front yet, but there's not a lot of action in the bulb front in terms of flowers anywhere else in our garden. And I'm seeing leaves of bulbs coming up everywhere. So I'm hoping that we have some good color, because there are fritillaria, the snake's head fritillaria. There's another type of daffodil, muscari, a whole bunch of little things that are so sweet. Spanish bluebells, I think they went in here. We've also got a grass called RTF fescue that's a fairly decent spreader, so I'm not sure how much is going to push through that. And I honestly planted the bulbs in a really wrong order. Those of you who've been watching our videos for a while, you know that when we initially tore up this ground and planted the trees, Aaron came in here with his tractor and just tilled up a bunch so that it was really nice and fluffy, and then I just threw bulbs out and then popped them down in the soil. I think most of them probably sunk too deep because we didn't have a very strong show the next year. And then we planted grass over the top of everything. We've planted bulbs since, but you know, who knows? I don't know. I think I'm just going to have to keep on plugging away at that and add a few more every fall. But I am pleased with the fruit trees and the rows. So we'll start right there. I cut one long shoot, and the rest of the branches, I just made sure that there were no leaves on them, and I wove them in and out of the fence slats. Works really nicely to have a fence right by your climbing rows. And then the trees. So there wasn't a whole lot of work on this one or on the apricot up there. I did a little bit of, you know, heading back of branches, but we still have a really nice pleasing shape. And this area being the backdrop to our flower garden, I want the trees to still look pretty. And the thing about the vase shape of pruning, it's a really efficient way of doing it, and it's really great for the tree and production and all of that, but they look so tortured to me. They look just, especially in the wintertime. This one thinned out the center big time. Took some lower branches off. Yeah, it's looking so much better. The lower branch coming off this one felt really good as well. We still have a very nice shape. I thinned out the center, but I still feel like we could thin more. I didn't do a whole lot on this nectarine. You know, we headed off the leader, and then I'm just kind of leaving it alone. It's so little. Oh my gosh, the plum tree. I got into it and I started cutting like water sprouts, and there was a bunch of weak growth toward the bottom. And then after a while, I just decided to take all those branches off because I could see that there was a fairly strong shape right here. So I think that this tree is going to bear some really nice fruit this year. Took off a lot of the top growth because I don't want to get out of control, but it's a lot easier, you know, to get around and to access what's there now. The nectarine, I took off a few lower branches and just thinned it out. Oh, and did some topping. Same thing for this apricot and this apple tree. And I think for the apple trees, I'm considering bagging the fruit this year because they're such small trees still, a manageable size, and I can thin the fruit down to just exactly how many I want on the plant. And then you can get these little, are they like a net bag kind of? They still allow light and air and stuff in, but you put them over. It's like a mesh bag. It's a small enough weave that insects can't get to it. And I think that's the way I'm going to approach the codling moth issue we had last year, because we had beautiful apples, but they were wormy. And I did make one batch of applesauce, but it took me a while cutting around all the worm damage in the apples and making sure none of those ended up in our applesauce. And then the containers up here, we've got the winter gem boxwood cones that wintered beautifully. They look so great. And I think they were white pansies, right? If I recall. We had white pansies surrounding these in the fall. Plus I removed the extra containers we had. We did a little fall display out here. It was really cute, but they were looking kind of sad. And I wanted to just kind of simplify this area. So I planted these really beautiful bright yellow pansies, and they show up beautifully against the white. Here's the other one over here. Really happy with those. Also cleaned up some columbine I've got right there. I forgot I planted that. Okay, now I want to show you the bulbs out here. I am so excited about this. Now, if you guys remember last fall, I can't remember how many bulbs went out here. Maybe I could watch that video back and figure it out. But I had a bunch of tulips and daffodils designated for out here because, you know, a lot of times we plant these tulips and daffs out in the flower beds. They look beautiful and I really want to cut them, but they look beautiful in the spots where I put them, and I put them there for a reason, so I have a hard time cutting them. So I'm hoping that by having these out here, I will have an easier time cutting. So first 4 rows here, look at the growth activity in these rows. Now we did not bury these tulips in the ground. Instead of individually digging holes or doing the trench method, we decided to, I took a garden hoe and I made a line in the soil so there was somewhere to nest the bulb so that it didn't topple. So we did that, lined up the bulbs just side by side, and then we topped them all with compost. For about 4 to 6 inches. It's about 4 inches now. It was about 6 inches when we started, but it's kind of compressed. So we just, you know, poured a bunch of compost over the top and hoped for the best. If we get in here and take a closer look, you can see all of the growth. It's amazing. And who knows, you know, time will tell. They had plenty of cold hours, which they need a certain amount in order to bloom productively. But I don't know, you know, being up further out of the ground, not getting quite as much insulation, we'll see what happens with like stem length and all of that. Yep, there are daffodils on the back part of this row. But I have them all organized. This row's all daffodils. Then we've got our row of best tulips. All of these bulbs came from color blends, and they have a section that's best purple, best pink, best white tulips. So that's the row of bests, and we've got them all grouped according to color. So like first section is best purple, and then we have best pink, best whatever, I don't know. These I'd have to look. Best white, and so on. This row right here are all lily flower tulips. So they've got like the very pointed edge. And then we've got a row of doubles. Oh, I'm excited to see this row. It's gonna be gorgeous. And then we're gonna start in with ranunculus and anemones. Those are going in next week. My goal was to consolidate what we were doing out here a little bit. I'm not doing the best job at that. I just couldn't be happier with how things are shaping up out here. I mean, if you go back a few years, so we're going into our 4th season with this space, starting this space from nothing, and maybe we can show you what that looked like. 4 years ago this spring, we were planting the fruit trees initially in this space, and there was nothing else out here, nothing. There was no fence back here, there was no shed, there was no flower garden, there was no flower beds. I mean, that was the next year. I think we kind of started in on that. I'm just so pleased with how it's all coming together. It's just a really exciting thing. And that is going to do it for today, you guys. I hope it was helpful seeing the fruit tree pruning again, just going through those steps, just one of those chores every single year. We'll get to the espalier later. We are planning on moving that like for reals this year. I know I've been saying it the 3rd year I'm saying it, so 3rd time's a charm, maybe. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you in the next video.